cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, welcome everybody. And I was on mute. Okay, that's like the third time that has ever happened to me since I've been doing this show. So I'm going to just take a moment here and start over again. I finally see you on mute. I was on mute. I don't know how that happened, but thank you guys for letting me know. So let's start this over again. At least for me, I'm starting over again because I just said all that stuff. So good. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. Okay, guys, this is episode 154 of Sports Cards Live. It is still Saturday night, September 17th, 2022. You guys know my name is Jeremy Lee. I want to thank Joe Perot for joining me last time for the episode about why I joined tag grading. Thank you, Joe. Thanks everybody for all the engagement last Saturday for that episode. Tomorrow on Collectible Live, our guest will be Rob Gerard. He is the host of the Sports Card Therapist podcast. I'm looking forward to having Rob on the show, and join me this Thursday with Adam Gray for the PWCC Premier Auction Ending Watch Party. I'm guessing we're going to witness about $15 million in cards being sold on Thursday night. I want to shout out the Center Stage app. Download the app in the App Store for quick comps, whether you are shopping at a card show or pricing out your own cards on any platform. It is continuously improving, so please join me in supporting these hobbypreneurs and the great team they have and the innovation that they are undertaking. And shout out tag grading. We will be set up at the Beckett Industry Summit at the end of this month, September 30th to October 5th. And we'll also be set up at the Union Marketplace Show in San Diego's Del Mar in mid-October. And as always, guys, I want to thank all you subscribers, viewers, podcast listeners. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please take a moment and do so. And as always, your questions, your comments are in play. So let's get to it. Tonight's guest got his start in the hobby when he was 7 or 8 years old, buying packs of 88 Topps baseball for Christmas. While the rest of us, myself included, were getting Nintendo games and that sort of thing, he was getting factory sets of baseball cards. He has since built up quite an impressive collection. He loves cards the way we love to see people love cards. His favorite players are Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, Tom Brady, and Tiger Woods, and his favorite teams are the Boston Celtics and the New England Patriots from Western Massachusetts, currently hailing from just outside Boston. Let's bring him out. Jeff Hart, welcome to Sports Cards Live. How are you? And thanks for not laughing at me from the back room there.
Doing great. And thanks for having me on, and looking forward to talk with you tonight.
Yeah, same here, Jeff. I'm still a little laughing at myself for being on mute for the first minute and a half of the show, but it's really good to have you, Jeff. We've been talking about this. It was pretty cool because we were both at the National, but we were both at Bleecker the Monday before National for their trade night, and then we rode on the shuttle together from New York City to Atlantic City. And we were sitting right next to each other. We were hanging out, chit-chatting, looking at some cards. And, I always think back to that experience because it was just a lot of fun. It was a nice community sort of event. And how did you enjoy that yourself? And not just the being a Bleecker on Monday, but like the bus ride and the fact that they did that for people. What did you think of that?
Yeah, so it was just a great experience. Just starting out at Bleecker, I had never been there before, and I'd heard a lot about the trade nights. And for me, it was just great to see a lot of people that I had talked to, just online and through other avenues, and to meet people in person was just incredible. And the relationships are really important to me in the hobby. And with the bus ride, having a lot of those same people on the bus and being able to spend those couple hours together, you really got to know each other a little bit more. And when we were talking, Jeremy, I saw a pack of 61 Fleer that you had showed me, and I was very impressed by that. And it was just great to learn a little bit more about your collection, and it was just so impressive, and to hear learned a lot about hockey on that trip as well. So it was great, and obviously that took us to the National after that.
Yeah, when you mentioned that my pack is 61 Fleer, I got this big smile on my face because right before we went live, and I said, and we were chatting, and I said, oh, there's something I want to just grab so I can show it to you during the episode when you talk about something related to it. And now you just sort of busted me. You've seen it before. I forgot that I showed you. So I'll show it again anyway for the crowd, because it's pretty cool and it ties right into what you'll be talking about. One other thing that I remember from the National, the week of the National, just back in July, was I forget what night it was, but it was early on. It was probably Wednesday night, actually. It might have been like the first night we were there. And we were at whatever we were doing that evening. We ended up at the casino. I think we were at the which one were we at? The Borgata. The Borgata, yeah. And I remember we were playing poker together at the same table, and I think I felted you at that table. Did I not?
You did.
I did.
You did.
I'm sorry about that. I'm still sorry for that, but it was still nice. It was great to hang out with you there, and of course throughout the National. But let's get into it. We got a lot of people here. Welcome everybody, and thanks for your patience with my going on mute for I think the third time in 2.5 years of doing this show. But we're going to get to the comments in a moment. Let's get into you though. I mean, let's start off talking about your hobby journey. Why don't you take us through your history, kind of start at the beginning and weave us through it?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I started about 7 or 8 years old, and just buying packs and kind of trading with kids at school. And through the years, through elementary school, I just accumulated just a lot of cards. I was about volume, early on. And one pretty interesting thing is I really learned how to read by reading the backs of the cards. And, I knew the stats of all the different players, and out of like a set of 792 Topps cards, I probably knew the names of just about all of them, and I just think about that. And, it's just kind of, it brings you back to those times. And then when I was really young as well, I was kind of being a little entrepreneurial, and I would sell cards down at the end of my driveway, kind of as a little dealer setup, almost like I'm selling, lemonade or vegetables, but I was selling baseball cards. And my parents had a place in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and I would also go out there and I would caddy in the morning. And then when I got done with caddying, I would go and I sell baseball cards in my driveway. I put up signs like we're having a yard sale. And that was just something that I recall that was fun. And then I took about 10-year hiatus through high school and college. And I was living out in California for a year, and I learned about PSA. And when I came back, I grabbed some of my collection that I had when I was a child, went back to my parents' house, grabbed some of my collection. And I learned about grading a little bit more. And so I submitted my first batch of cards to PSA. It might have been 10 or 15 cards initial when you do the Collectors Club membership. And a few of the cards I submitted, I can remember Ricky Henderson rookie card. I had a random T06 baseball card, a couple other football cards, not, baseball, nothing too impressive. And I got my grades back, and I realized I didn't know too much about grading as I thought I did. And so I learned a lot about the process. And then, from that point on, I got my first graded card. And we might talk about that, but it was a 1961 Fleer Bob Cousy card. And I won that in it was a memory lane or mile high auction. And from that point on, the rest is history in terms of going and collecting graded cards.
Right on. Yeah. So a couple of things I want to dive into deeper in that whole history is you were a baseball kid in the in your early days, which would have been like the late 80s. Yeah. But at some point you transitioned over to basketball. So I want to get to that. But also you mentioned Ricky Henderson was one of the first cards you ever graded. And the Henderson rookie is a card that's special to me too, Jeff. Mm-hmm. I was right out of high school. I went to Australia for a year on the Students Working Abroad program. And when I came back, I flew through LA, and I had a great uncle that lived there. And he took me to a baseball card shop, and I bought the Ricky Henderson rookie. This was April 1991. I don't know where the shop was, who the proprietor of the shop was. I don't have any recollection of that. But that card was always special to me, and I no longer have that copy, and I no longer have a Henderson rookie, but I definitely want to get one. I saw one at the local card show today. It was a PSA 7, a nice looking copy, but the guy said, he's like, it's from my personal collection. If it doesn't sell, I'm okay with that. I don't want to buy it from his personal collection. Mm-hmm. But in any event, talk a bit about how you moved from baseball over to basketball. What was the impetus for that?
Yeah. So I was pretty much 100% baseball, as you mentioned. And right when basketball started to branch out from tops, around the 89-90 time frame, Skybox came out, and it was a very hyped up set. David Robinson and Michael Jordan, a bunch of other players. And so I put together a complete set of that with my mother, actually. And that was the first time I got into basketball. And then I really started watching Michael Jordan and getting into his cards. And from then I was probably 50-50 baseball, basketball. And then when I started back after college, it was 100% basketball.
Okay, right on. And we're going to get into that. So I have one more story about me, and then I promise everybody we'll focus back on Jeff. But speaking of Skybox, so again, as I mentioned a minute ago, Jeff, I was in Australia from September of 1990 until April of 1991. And me and a friend of mine went there, and we lived in Sydney, and we were both bus boys at the Hard Rock Cafe in Sydney. And I remember going to a book game store and finding 1990, I guess it was the first year of Skybox basketball packs sitting on the shelf or on the front, on the counter, at the checkout counter of this, comic and game store. And I was like, I have to start buying these packs because it was a taste of home. It reminded me of being at home. And I was 18 years old. I was a little bit homesick. So I was buying packs I think it was 1990, right? The first year of Skybox. Yeah. Packs of 1990 Skybox in Sydney, Australia, and opening those when I was there, supposed to be, finding myself doing some traveling. But so that set has a special place with me. And I think it's interesting that it has a special place with you as really your first foray into basketball. And you mentioned it had David Robinson, Michael Jordan, but it was those graphics on them, those backgrounds that were, now you look at them, you're kind of like, but back then they were kind of revolutionary. How did you feel about them? What's that?
Like lasers, like the 90s colors. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. We're going to get more into, your, when you said, and kind of then it was just, you let loose after the point where you left off last time. But let's go to the chat for a moment and just say hello to who we have here. Run through some comments. Jake Dahl, welcome. Jake is also in the house. Frank, good to see you. Thank you for joining as always. Yeah, Bill, I was muted. I don't know why, but I was muted. Thanks, Timeless. Thank you, Jake. Yeah, thanks, Frank. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you guys. Baseball card, Curmudgeon, good to see you. Thank you for being here. Richard Zangrillo says Jeff Hart is the man. And I mean, you guys know each other, so that's really cool. No more reading lips. Thank you, Scott Pope. Welcome to the show. Jake's Toe says you must like listening to yourself. Not want to have to do it back to back twice, but thank you so much. JMF says, what are we pumping tonight? The hobby, JMF. We are always pumping the hobby on this show. Albert says, finally get to watch an episode again. Good evening, Jeremy and chat. Good evening to Albert. Jeremy, hello. This is Foul Fireball, also named Jeremy. Good to see you. Chad Shipper, what's going on? Joe Perot, good to see us. Says Jeff has a fire collection. JMF, as I mentioned, I felt it, Jeff, at the poker table. But I will say that I pretty much got felted before I went home for the night myself. So Sanderson to Orr, Eric says, can't find a nicer guy than Jeff in the hobby. Always fun to go to shows with him. That's really nice. Richard says, Jeff gave me the greatest gift ever at the National, a PSA 10 egg. Only Clubhouse OGs will understand. I certainly know what you're talking about there. Richard, hello, Jeff McMahon. Trevor LeConte says, smash the likes, family. Thank you. Justin Vick, Todd McDonald, good to see you. And Vintage Card Collector. Yeah, we're going to see some awesome vintage cards tonight. We're definitely going to. And Dave Hart from Ontario, New York, good to see you. I wonder if there's any relation between Dave Hart and Jeff Hart. Okay, Jeff, let's talk a bit about, you know what, I want to start with, let's do this. Let's talk about the first, when you started really getting into graded cards, where was your focus?
Yeah, so my focus when I first started was the Boston Celtics. So I wanted to, on the PSA Set Registry, they had a set you could collect, key card set called All Time Celtics. And so I wanted to build that set and started to learn about these old sets that I never knew existed before, like 57 Topps basketball, 61 Fleer Topps basketball, and started buying the rookie cards of those players and learning a lot about the game, the history of it, and I just kind of fell in love with the vintage and just kind of going back and learning about the great players prior to today. And it did start with a 61 Fleer Kuzi card, as I mentioned, not his rookie card. But when I was doing that, the Celtics set, I also started to put together a 61 Fleer set. And so that's been constant for me ever since 2005, 2006, when I started with graded cards.
So you started with the Kuzi from 61. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, his rookie card is in the 57 Topps set along with Bill Russell. Those would be the two key cards from that set. You had the Kuzi. What kind of like switched in your mind that made you say, okay, I've got one card. I'm now going to go for that whole set? Was it because you had some other Celtics from the set as well? Like, what was trying to get into the mind of you as a collector here?
Yeah.
What kind of went off for you that made you say, okay, now we're going to chase that whole set? And how many cards are in the 61 Fleer set?
Yeah, it's 66 cards. It's 44 cards that are, you can look at it as your base cards, and 44 and then 22 in-action cards. So kind of like a duplicate of the same player. And out of that set, there's probably, I would say close to 40 of them are Hall of Famers. So it was a set that, to me, it was easier to collect than baseball, having only 66 cards, and there was so much star power in it that I thought it would just had a good long-term potential. And so I just kind of went for that, and I started building it. And at the time, my goal was to build it in PSA 8. So I was putting that together and doing that over time. And then over the years, I continued upgrading my set and have probably 80% nines, at this point in that set. And I just love it. And, it's still one of my favorites today.
Yeah, as it should be. I love it too. I only have one card from it, the Wilt Chamberlain.
Mhm.
I'd love to get a Jerry West, an Oscar Robertson, maybe eventually an Elgin Baylor. I think those are the 4 key rookie cards in the set.
Yep.
But I love the Wilt Chamberlain in that set so much. So, you mentioned that you're it's kind of been an ongoing thing for you, and you've upgraded your way through it. Like, describe the process of that from a set collector's perspective, a set registry perspective. Like, a lot of people, I've heard of people upgrading. Well, you hear about it all the time, I suppose, but can you just explain the mindset and how do you, in your mind, get sort of around the fact that you're spending more and more money on the same set, and why is it so important to upgrade from a 7 to a 7.5 or a 7 to an 8 and keep on going? Why is it important to you to upgrade? And just explain the process, and I'll stop there. Too many questions. I'll ask the next one later.
Yeah. So I think the first off is that you're taking on a challenge. You have that collector's mentality, and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to complete it. And I would say the motivation to continue to improve it is absolutely driven by the PSA Set Registry. And so you have in the registry, each card has a weighting, and between 1 and 10, depending on the value of the card. And then you have the grade, and so there's a multiplier with that, and you get a score. So what I'm getting at is that you have this score that you achieve based on your condition of your cards, and with that, you kind of have this competitiveness with others that are collecting that set at the same time. And so you have a leaderboard, and you kind of, just incrementally upgrading a card in your set can move you up a notch, in terms of having the best set or better than, you just kind of, have progress. And so I think it's just the mindset of a collector and of being on the registry that just motivates you.
So, we talked about it, and, the PSA Set Registry it's an amazing thing. It might be the smartest thing they ever did to create all this loyalty, and for people to want their cards in PSA slabs for the purpose of competing on the registry. But and it's funny, I just saw this comment come in here. Matt Clark says the registry has ruined my life. And I was very active on the registry for several years as well. I think I had about 60 or 70 different sets going, and all sorts of different things. I'm no longer doing it personally, but I know many people still are, of course. And it seems to me like for you as a collector, you've got the collector party that wants a complete set, but then there's a competitor within that collector as well, that wants to compete with other people doing the set. Is it fair to what is more important to you, the collecting or the competing?
I would say that's the collecting, and the competition, competing in me is still there as well. So it's definitely a combination. But what I will say that comes out of it is relationships, hobby relationships, within, it started within the registry. So there's competition, but at the same time, you're also helping other collectors out improve their sets. So you're competing and helping at the same time. And by that, you make a lot of relationships and friends, and people are there helping each other improve. So it's just to me, it was always just an amazing experience for me. And also the relationships that I've developed over time have been really valuable for me. One I just want to give a shout out to is the person that got me started in the 1957 set and reached out to me personally and congratulated me on, starting the set. And I was just at the beginning of it, was Michael Riccozzi. And so he is truly the king of vintage basketball. And he's a mentor and a friend. He's taught me a lot. And I basically, I know we can talk about this, but he basically got me started in that one set and got me motivated to kind of keep continuing the journey as I went. So it was, like I said, it's the relationships, and that's to me kind of overtakes a lot of the collecting and competition. So it's a balance of those things.
Yeah, it's a great comment. I'm so happy you shout out Michael Riccozzi. I know I shouldn't. I guess I know him. I had him on an episode of Collectible Live. Gosh, this is probably about 8 or 9 months ago, and what a great guest he was. And when you say the king of vintage basketball, I think there's really no arguing that. But I looked at your listing on the set registry, and I mean, your set registry is extremely impressive. Like, you've got awards, you've got 100% completion in so many different sets that you're in. Whether you've got every single NBA team, they're all-time greats. Those are all separate sets on the registry, and you're like number 100% complete, or number 1 or 2 in like all of them. It seemed like to me. I couldn't believe just how high up on the leaderboard you are on so many of these sets. Not that I had no reason not to believe it, but I was like, wow, this is some serious stuff. And then you shout out Michael Riccozzi. Is he still, like, he had the all-time great sets for many of these things? Does he still, where does he fall now? What's he been up to, if you can speak at all to that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, he's still in the game. He still is the leader in we call him the big three in vintage basketball. So 1948 Bowman, 1957 Topps, 1961 Fleer. And so, he's amassed almost perfect sets of those three, where you can't even improve a card in the set. So he's still, he's still involved in those sets, and also a lot of the Hall of Fame rookies. So, absolutely, he's still a big part of the hobby.
That's great. And so, you also mentioned, he reached out to you and he helped you kickstart your 57 top set. How did he do that? What did he do for you that helped you kick that off? And really talk about just what that meant to you in the context of how well did you know him at the time?
Yeah, so I didn't know him well at all. I had just started, building some of the Celtics players, 57 Topps. So I had purchased a Kuzi and a Russell, and Tommy Heinsohn and Frank Ramsey, a few other players. And he reached out to me through the registry. There's someone you can contact each other through there. And so he sent me a note saying, your collection is very impressive. I'd like to, talk to you more about the set. So we got in touch, and he helped me essentially kind of advise me on how to collect that set, and exchange some cards, and from there we kind of kept in touch, and just he learned more about my collection. I learned a lot about his amazing collection, and from there I would say he was a person that introduced me to the National, and that really changed and kind of took things to the next level for me, because if I knew about that, I would have been there 10 years before my first one.
Right on. I want to come back to that in a moment, but do you mind if I share your set registry list with the audience here?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen, guys, and you'll see, if you're familiar with the PSA Set Registry, you will understand just how impressive this is. So this is, as you can see right here, this is the Hart collection. These are all his sets within the registry. It looks like he's got 81 altogether. We're on the first page, and every time you see one of these stars in the year, that means that his set was named as like the best set in that year. And like, I'd mentioned, I'd been participating in this set registry for, I don't know, probably 10 years myself. I never once received one of these things. And look at all of them. He's got like 50 of them here. It's super impressive. I also would point out for people to look at the rank column. So I might have got it wrong when I said you're one or two. Well, look at all these number ones. Your first place in all of these your second place in all of these, third place, fourth place. But what I also find really important when you're looking at these sets is the percentage complete. This column right here. Wait, let's go. Yeah, let's do this. Percentage complete. It's funny how you can sort. You got all of these sets that are 100% complete. I'm not seeing how many cards you need for each one, but you also have the weighted GPA. So you're the average grade. And you might be looking and say, well, there's no such thing in PSA as a grade higher than a 10. How does he have all these 11s and 10 point somethings? And that's because you get bonus points for having like the best card and certain things like that. So, but what's just really so awesome about all this is just, for me, what's the most awesome, Jeff, are all of these are all certificate award winners, as you can see. Certificate award winners, which when you look at Jeff's collection within basketball, it is really broad within basketball. And I know I'm moving around a lot, so it's hard to see, but he's got the Dirk Nowitzki rookie set. I mean, I'm just going to call out some random ones. The all-time NBA guards, all-time NBA forwards, the 75th anniversary team. Looks like you might need one more card there. The Bob Cousy Master set, he's got 90% complete. All-time 76ers, Bulls, Celtics, Warriors, Pistons, like all the different teams. All-time Rockets, future Hall of Fame players. That's a fun one, actually, because it can move a little bit, right? You never know. How do they vote in a player who's a future Hall of Famer? And I know that they go to the people who are in the set registry to vote him in. All the other teams here: Jazz, Suns, Sonics, Bucks. Really cool. But I think you're the one you mentioned the big three. So how would I find though? What are the big three? The Hall of Fame. What's the most important one to you? Let me ask you that.
Yeah. So it's 1961 Fleer is still the most important to me. And I would say 57 tops, and one that I'm currently putting together that I find pretty fascinating is the 1971 top set. And the reason for that, first, it has a lot of star power to it. There's a little over 233 cards, so it's the biggest set that I've put together. But at that time in the 70s, you have, Pete Maravich, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, all those players, John Havlicek. And then 1971 is the first year of cards that has the ABA players. And I just think that that's really cool, in my opinion. You just see these names of teams that you've never heard of before. And then you start to find out a lot about the game, learning about the ABA. So I kind of dug myself into history a little bit more as I kind of advanced into different things. So learning a lot by the ABA, I started an ABA master set. Basically, there's a year when they had the 30th anniversary of the ABA. And so they voted the players, and the media voted on the best ABA players, and they came up with a top 30. And so then a set was built around that. And then a goal of mine was to collect those great ABA players in the best grade possible. And so that's one that actually has a lot of meaning to me, that I've put together, and 30 cards is more achievable, and just try to make that as best as I could. And then from there, I kind of branched out a lot into other things. So WNBA, for example, and then one that I've recently started to get into, and these cards are more sentimental because they just don't have as much market value right now, are international players. So learning about the international game, FIBA, and some of the great players that were never in the NBA and most people haven't heard of. But, there's a lot of, Panini cards, Panini stickers of them and others. And so you start to learn about the international game. And I just kind of became, try to become as knowledgeable as I could about all parts of basketball.
You just love studying the history of the sport, don't you?
I do. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's part of there's a certain collector, a certain attribute that some collectors have. I don't think everybody has it, but I think as you go further back in time, you become a student of the history of the game and you want to learn about it. And part of that might be because you want to justify purchasing cards from eras that are well before you were born. And so, it's like I could go chase a George Mikan rookie from the 48 Bowman basketball set. But I never saw him play. I don't know anything about him. How that said, when you go research who he was and what he meant to the game, you learn that he was the first superstar of basketball, and they invented the goaltending rule because of him, because he was stopping the ball from going in on its way down the arc. I mean, that's all pretty cool stuff. And if we are fans of sport, it's nice to understand the history and who the pioneers were. So I think it's really cool to do that. And that's what the beauty of vintage is, that you're not just collecting pieces to fill in a space in your binder or a hole in your collection. You're also collecting history, the history of cardboard, the history of sports, culture. It all kind of comes into play. Does that all resonate with you? Is that part of why you love collecting vintage?
Absolutely. It's just a lot is just learning, like you said, the history of the game. And then digging into the greats of your favorite teams. So that's, the reason of going with the Boston Celtics. And I've not just collected cards with the Celtics. I've also got into some memorabilia with them as well. One thing I do have is a autographed cigar, Victory cigar, Red Auerbach, which is a fun thing that I picked up at one time. And also when they tore down the old Boston Garden, which unfortunately I never got to go to a game there, and I heard it was just a really great place to see a basketball game. They decided to cut up the famous parquet floor. And so what I have done or would do is get pieces of the floor and then get those autographed by the great Celtics players. And so, thankfully, before a lot of these greats had passed away, I got their autographs on these. And that's something that, I find pretty cool to have.
Right on. Okay. I got a bunch of things to ask you. We're going to go to some comments first here. Hits and Chick says Jeff Hart to the moon. So we're hyping Jeff Hart here. We're pumping Jeff Hart a little bit too, I guess. Jake said, had my Henderson rookie stolen years ago, still looking for a graded 8 or higher. I've been picky about it. And that's a card that you can be picky about because there's no shortage of Ricky Henderson rookies out there. Grotman cards in the house. Mitch, good evening to you. Joe Pro makes a really great comment here. Says it's so helpful to have mentors. And I think that applies to regular life. It applies to your career, and it can apply to you in the hobby as well. You're a great example of that. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Michael Riccozzi? And again, having met him, I spent a few hours with him, I'll be in virtual studios, but he's just seemed like just a wonderful man overall, and I could see him mentoring. So can you just speak to the benefit of having a mentor in the hobby a little bit more? And not, it doesn't necessarily have to be about Michael himself, but just because other people might not have access to him. But should other collectors, do you think collectors should seek out, if they want to, a mentor in the hobby?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can look at it as not just mentors, but also, hobby contacts and friends, and just getting to know more people in the hobby. And I think that once you have someone that can kind of help you, guide you on the journey, that can save you a lot of time and a lot of money in some cases, just by, having someone give you advice of, look for this in this card, or look at something in certain condition. And I find it just invaluable. And that's one thing that I've always been proud of, to be able to kind of help others. Someone asks you questions, I'm very open to helping other collectors and providing any advice that I can, if people are interested in what I do. So I think it's really important. It's kind of like anything, it's it just helps to kind of help to have someone provide you advice along the way, no matter what it is.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And anyone, if anyone out there watching, if you're on Instagram, you're not yet following Jeff on Instagram, his Instagram handle is on the ticker right now at @Patriot_sports cards. So feel free to give him a follow, and you never know, you guys could become hobby buddies. I don't think it's too hard to become hobby friends with Jeff Hart. Jake Dahl has a question for you, Jeff. What's your favorite card and set? Let's jump into that question. I think it's a great one.
Yeah, so the favorite set, I still got a 6/61 Fleer, and I think Jeremy and I share a similar card as the favorite. It would be my Wilt Chamberlain.
Let's see it.
All right.
I know we can do. We don't have to do it all yet.
But
yeah, it's such a beautiful. I just love the card. That to me is it just reeks of iconicism.
Yeah, just with the black and white and then the colors, I think sort of just blends well together.
Yeah, such a great card and very worthy of being your favorite set and card. I mean, it's your favorite set partially because it's the first one you put together.
Yep.
And the Wilt Chamberlain, I think, speaks for itself. Tom Bullard says, "Evening, fellow cardboard lovers, enthusiasts, and hoarders." Well said, Tom. Good evening and welcome to the show. JMF says that Jeff is a WNBA whisperer. And Mitch wants to know, what does Jeff consider to be the top Sabonis card? Is that something you're qualified to answer?
Yeah, I would say it's his rookie card. So he has a card in 1985 called Merchante. I think that's how you pronounce it. A Spanish card. And that is his first card, so I would say it would be that.
Right on. Thank you. There you go, Mitch. Hockey Cards Up, welcome to the show. And Matt Clark, I think, speaking about all these great vintage players and retired Hall of Famers, says their legacies are cemented in stone. That is true. And therefore, the volatility of their values on the secondary markets are not quite as pronounced as those of our current rookies and young prospects. But hey, there's room in the hobby for everyone to collect everything. Just depends what you're into. When you have a habit of upgrading cards regularly, you really have to watch your budget, right? Because, you could see a card out there that you don't currently own that you want to buy, but then there's an upgrade available to you, and that could consume all of your financial resources. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that? And do you have a motto like some people's motto is collect what you like, buy what you like, collect, buy the best you can afford. How do you govern yourself when it comes to these things?
Yeah, I think you hit it right there. It's always been buy the best you can afford for me. And I just think that leads to kind of your best potential of, investment or return in the long run. And I would say that it's when you look at these auction catalogs and some of these cards, it's there's so many cards you'd want to have. And so it's difficult to kind of, realize, okay, what can you afford or can't you afford? And for me, it's always about kind of coming up with what that number is that makes the most sense for you and your budget, and then finding a way to get there. For me, a lot of it is doing buying cards raw and grading, and then kind of reselling those and using those funds to kind of build your collection. And that's what I've done over the years. And also, one thing that I've done that have helped give me higher grades, and this is not an easy task, is submitting cards to PSA for review and being able to get a bump of a grade. And so, I've been blessed and lucky to have some 9s that I've submitted up being upgraded to 10s. And so those, when I couldn't afford the 10, I made my own 10 by, submitting a 9. So the other thing that I think is important as well is not just, it's not just having the best you can afford. It's also having a good eye and trying to, buy the card within the holder and whatever that is. And I think that's very important because there's such a range of, as there's such a range of different cards within the grade. And then being able to find the best card you can in that certain grade often, can pay off in the long run.
And that's kind of the eye appeal angle, that a lot of people talk about. And I think you're right. The 10-point grading scale is very limited in really in descriptive value, but it does allow for you to then try and just pick out one that is really strong for the grade. And if you can buy a card in one grade and resubmit it to the same company and get it back in a higher grade, which is a bit of an angle that a lot of people do play in the hobby. Okay, I want to do a couple of comments here. Actually, just one comment here. Jake says that PSA should let Jeff upgrade all his old slabs to the newest slab free of charge with all of his awards. Yes, they should. Yes, they should, Jeff. I'd love to see them do something for you. Okay, so we talk about buying the best we can afford, and I've always been aware of that as a piece of advice that that the hobby veterans like to pass down to all of us newcomers along the way. My issue with that, Jeff, is that if I spend what I can afford on one card, I might have nothing left to afford on another card. So the way that I deal with that is I kind of I refine it a little bit and I say, buy the best I can afford that I want to allocate to that card, as long as I have some resources left over to buy the next card that I'm going to want to buy, because let me tell you, there's always the next card that I want to buy. And I'm sure that goes for everybody watching right now. So how do you do that? Like, have you ever found yourself in a position where it's like, okay, here's an upgrade for an important card from one of my sets. I need to buy it. It's taking up all my money, all my budget for either this year or this month or this quarter. And then you have to wait to kind of save up again to afford another card. Like, how do you manage that within your own set, within your own collection?
Yeah, a lot of it just comes down to just the grind, like I mentioned, of, first off, do I need to sell something to get a card that I think is more important, it's going to be more difficult to acquire? And using that, that is one angle. And then, coming down to the grading, I just have to go back to that, where you can make, doing it, certain ways, you can make a good return off of, grading and selling cards. And that just kind of provides you a bank and a run that you can just kind of keep improving and growing your collection. And I think that's the way I've done it in a nutshell, honestly.
Yeah, no, fair. I mean, I would think that every time you buy a card, it's sort of an independent decision. You got to think about your whole situation and then decide if you're going to pull the trigger, especially if it's for an amount that is of significant value to you. And when I look at your set registry and I understand the scope of your collection, I think, wow, this guy's got to be loaded. This guy's got to have millions of dollars cash in the bank. My understanding is that you don't. So how, like, you're a very inspiring collector, I would think, because you are a sort of an, and listen, I don't know anything about your personal financial situation, but my perspective based on our discussion is that you're a normal guy. You're not flush with millions of bucks in the bank.
Yeah. What
sort of advice would you give somebody who wants to build a collection, like a really solid collection, on, I don't know what word to use here, like on a just a respectable annual income sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it's to first, come up with a goal and of what you want to do, whether it's a player or a set, and start, don't try to don't spread yourself too thin, and just to start somewhere and kind of see, like anything, you start, you kind of build some momentum, and you're building towards something. And I must say that from when I started over 15, 16 years ago to now, cards have increased in value a lot. So that that's been a factor where when I purchased a lot of these, they weren't as expensive as they are now. But what I go back to is, I think you start small, and you start to build your way up, and just, it's like an incremental type. To me, it's a grind. Honestly, it's like an incremental type of progress for me. And I think one thing it comes down to as well is patience. And that's something that's very difficult to do as a collector. I'm sure most people can sympathize with that, because you want to get that card, you want to get it sometimes at whatever price. The market might not be in the most ideal spot for a certain card. And so you have to be patient if you know whether, okay, I might want to wait until this card actually goes down a little bit for the right price point. And sometimes that doesn't work out the right way for you, but a lot of times it does. Or you want to wait to get a certain copy of the card, and you have a little, got to hold back and have the patience to do that. And I think that, it kind of keeps you kind of motivated, to find the right card that you're looking for. And, I also go back to, looking at patience. I think about it, and, like, I don't just buy off eBay. I also do auction houses as well. And, the likes of like Heritage and Mile High and Memory Lane, and among other auction houses, and the PWCC, and among others. But a lot of those in the past years, usually there's different formats, and a lot of the auctions way back used to start at like 10 o'clock and would go till 5 a.m. And a lot of those have kind of improved over time, where they don't do that as much anymore. But I've been patient sometimes, where I've kept myself up pressing a button at 3, 4 a.m, just to make sure that, I won a card that I was really interested in. And, that kind of makes you think back to when I got this card, that's what I was doing at the time. And you just kind of have those random memories of certain cards.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I think the biggest takeaway as far as advice for people who are looking to build a collection is patience. And patience would have worked against you in 2020 and 2021,
Absolutely.
but it didn't work against you all that much leading up to then. It was the values of cards just as an index were a lot more slow. It was just a slower rise,
Yeah.
So I think patience is probably the most important advice that comes out of what you just said. But I do like at the end how you also talked about, you can look at a card and remember thinking back to when you got it and tell the story, and all that is a lot of fun as well. Okay, we're gonna go to these 2 comments here. This first question is directed to you, Jeff, but I'm gonna take it if you don't mind, and we'll get to it here. So Grotman says, does Jeff think there's a market opportunity for grading companies to have a subcategory for eye appeal? And then Silver Bull says, I think they should do that. As a coin collector, I know how eye appeal can increase a card's value. So I'm going to explain why they shouldn't do that and why they won't do that. And here's why, guys. Here's why they shouldn't do it. Because it's a huge conflict, first of all, for a grading company to tell you an eye appeal. They are there to assess the grade of a card based on a technical set of standards, and you can see those on any grading company's website. That is what that is really what they're doing as far as a grade. They're grading a card based on a technical set of standards. So if they then come along and give you an eye appeal rating, they are bringing into question their own grade, their own technical grade. I believe that the current system of eye appeal designations is the way it should be. I know a lot of people don't like them, but I think they make a lot more sense for third parties to come around and say, hey, here's a card that is either strong for the grade. You can have a 52 tops Mickey Mantle in a PSA 1 holder that could look like a 7 because it's got a pinhole in it or some paper loss on the back or something like that. That's going to be strong for the grade. It's going to have a high eye appeal rating, but that should be left to third parties who are not involved, who are not part of the grading company. That is best served by the services that are already doing them. The Mike Baker Authenticated. A lot of people don't understand. They say it's grading the grader. It's not grading the grader. It's actually calling out the limitations of a technical set of standards that have been in place for over 30 years. So Mike Baker Authenticated and the PWCC eye appeal designations, that's what they're there to do. They're there to help people who don't maybe understand eye appeal or don't understand a technical grade versus what's strong or weak or average for the grade, and say, hey, based on our experience of seeing hundreds of these cards, this one stands out as very special and very nice for the technical grade. So the fact that you have PWCC doing it, and the fact that you have Mike Baker Authenticated doing it, or I'm not sure, whatever he calls his service, and these are people that have seen tons of cards. I think Mike Baker was one of PSA's very first graders at the beginning of time, so they're definitely qualified for it. And then you've got all of the amateur quarterbacks like myself who sit there and tell you that this is a great card for the grade because it looks good. But for a grading company to tell you that this is a great looking card for the grade, and they've already put their grade on it, I just think that's a recipe for just a lot of conflict. And I don't think they should do it, and I don't think they would do it. But the question was directed at you, Jeff. You could tell I wanted to take it myself. Based on the question, based on what I've said, where do you fall?
I fall exactly with how you think about it. It's every company has their, like you said, technical set of standards and grades, and that's how they should judge every single card that comes into their company. And like you said, after that, it's really the collector or the a third party, company or assessor to tell you otherwise and give their own opinion of what's in that holder. But that definitely should come after secondary.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I also, believe it should be a third party to do it. And I think that's a perfect sort of setup and situation for those cards when you do have somebody else who is a renowned expert or just doesn't have to be a renowned expert, somebody that you as a consumer can just trust, and you can decide that for yourself, whether you trust one person or one company's eye appeal designation, or you have a friend in the hobby whose opinion you trust, and you send them a copy and say, hey, what do you think of this? Or, you're at a show together, you show them, you say, hey, do you think this has great eye appeal for the grade, that sort of thing. So I think we're on the same page there. And I think once you sort of think of that in that context, you kind of can probably come back and agree with these positions. I would hope. Jake's toe about a comment from earlier says maybe not in the bank, but in his vault. And I think that describes a lot of people in the hobby that are, you may not be liquid rich or flush with value or at least some worth, but several people have that in cardboard, which is just not money, but it's somewhat liquid, that's for sure. Wes Dubois asked the question, why is a card that is still in a factory set not automatically considered at least a 9? And Richard answered it perfectly, because it's not guaranteed to have perfect centering edges, surface, or corners. And he's exactly right, Wes. The cards can bang around within a factory box. They might not have been cut centered at the factory originally. They could have rough edges, all sorts of reasons. A print issue, some black streaks through the surface of the card, that sort of thing. Toa says not all cards and graded cards are the same, especially on the high end. Definitely. JMF says, I always feel that the term eye appeal is a marketing tactic to sell graded cards in a certain grade. Yeah, I don't think so, JMF. Now, listen, sometimes it certainly is. Sometimes somebody can just say high eye appeal in the description. But if you're not applying your eye appeal standards on a consistent basis and you're just throwing it out there whenever you feel like it willy-nilly, you're doing a disservice and you are just doing it for marketing. I think your comment is not bad, JMF, but the term always, your second word there, always, is wrong. You should substitute that with sometimes. And I think that you're bang on with that. Joe Perot says, when the boom happened and the vintage basketball market surged, were there any particular vintage cards that surprised even Jeff in how quickly they gained favor and increased in price? Over to you, Jeff.
Great question. I would say I was very surprised how quickly the Bird Magic went up in price compared to what it was at one point in time. Just in a PSA 9 holder, for example, that card you could get for, believe it or not, $1,500, $2,000. And at one point, I think it went up to almost $40,000. And for a card that, reasonably has a larger population in consideration of other vintage cards, that was very surprising to me. I think that this card probably deserves to be high, but it went really fast, was Dr. J's rookie card as well. That again was about a $2,500 card for years, and then moved up to $25,000 almost overnight. It was just very crazy to see.
And we saw it with others too. The Bill Russell. Yeah. We saw it with all the Mount Rushmore cards, and even the next 5 or 6 after that. We saw it with all of those, because all of a sudden, people who got into the hobby because of Luka and Zion and Patrick Mahomes, and then the trio of baseball superstars and a couple of hockey players, they started looking back and saying to themselves, hey, if I'm going to spend $5,000 on a Luka card, but yet I can get a Wilt Chamberlain for $5,000, shouldn't I buy a Wilt Chamberlain too, at least to hedge my bet a little bit from a financial perspective? Because, hey, he's an all-time great and Luka's just getting started. Nothing against Luka at all. I'm just saying that I think a lot of people realize that, and the vintage caught up. And I remember when vintage started catching up. It was actually at the end of 2020. It was right in that September, October, November 2020. Vintage basketball started to catch up, and then in December, hockey kind of followed along. There were a couple of big sales. I remember that pretty clearly. Okay, we're going to just take some more questions here, Jeff. Mark Santucci does want to know if I'm going to have an after-hour show. I wasn't planning on it, Mark, but I guess if enough people want it, I could come back and just do a little Q&A sort of thing for sure. Toa says, printing in mass quantity has human error and technical manufacturing error. They're not going to stop the press, which costs time and money to get one card perfect. Yeah, bingo right there. Definitely makes sense to me. Jake says, did Jeff liquidate any big cards during the card boom?
Yes, I would say, but very selective. So what happened a lot is in some of the sets, you might have cards in a high grade that would go up in price a lot more than you felt comfortable, or that didn't make sense. And so a lot of those I would let go and either wait till I thought it was at a more reasonable price, or I would just take the grade down and downgrade. And then I would use that and apply that to other cards I was interested in. So that's, now that I mention it, that is another way that, I was able to kind of gain additional funds and kind of use that as like a market timing thing to, to help gain and move up with your cards.
Well said. Thank you for that. Mark has a question. He says, Jeff, do you have any cards of the Doctor in a 76ers uniform?
I do. I do have his rookie, but I'm trying to remember what year he went into 76ers. Might have been 74, maybe his 3rd or 4th year. And I collected, or a registry set I have of all Dr. J's cards. So from 72 to 86 or 87. So I do have 76ers.
There you go, Mark. Another question. Do you have a favorite grade for any 70s cards? I like this question because it a lot of people kind of actually, you are willing to accept a lower graded card the further you go back. And a standard I've heard a lot of people is like, for the 50s, I want 5s. For the 60s, I want 6s. For the 70s, I want 7s, 80s, 8s.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you fall in all of those decades? We'll just take Mark's question here and we'll blow it up to being 50s through the 80s.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's not just for me, and it's not for everyone, but for me, it's the 40s and 50s, 8s, the 60s, 9s, and then everything else 10s.
This is crazy talk. You know that. I mean, like, we're talking about, it's not great. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking super high grade here, very low populations and all that. But you've also been working at this a long time and kind of building up your sets. Let's do one thing. Let's scale it back a little bit. Not you,
Sure.
but what do you think? Where do you? What's your perspective, your perception on where kind of most people fall as far as those? Like, I went through the 50s, 5, 60s, 6 little spiel there.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Do you think most people fall there, or where do you think is a good target?
Yep. I think it's pretty close to what you're saying, Jeremy. Like the 50s and 60s, 6s and 7s, I would say is a pretty reasonable, and I think in a really good price band. And then going from the 70s, 8s, I think are a very good band to be in. And then once you get into kind of the more higher printing in the 80s and 90s, I think it's 9s or 10s depending on the player.
Yeah, I think so too. But it all comes down to what you can afford. And I think there's nothing wrong with people, especially if you want to have a wide range of players, because the lower the grade, the more cards you can own. Just
absolutely
a function of budget.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with picking up PSA 6s and 7s or BGS or any of the companies.
Yep.
6s and 7s for the 80s. The 90s, there's so many. It's not expensive to get 10s. It just isn't for most players. Maybe of course Jeter and some other ones aside, but you can pick up cards from the 70s in 7s and still have a pretty nice card and have a nice rounded collection. I think it's important for people to realize that a lot of what we see on social media and especially the auction catalogs and a lot of Instagram posts and all that is the best of the best. And it's really, that's not what the hobby's all about. It is for some people, but you can still feel pretty good about building out and just even just owning a copy of the card. Mm-hmm. I know people that collect PSA 1s of everything because it's kind of cool. You can get a really nice one for a decent price.
Yep.
But you can also do 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s. You can do anything. So I just think it's important that people realize and not to get discouraged by what you sometimes see out there and just kind of, stay in your lane, build out, kind of allocate funds on a per card basis that you think makes sense. So you can get as many cards as you want. Maybe start off with a checklist and the value you want to spend. Divide that value by the number of cards on that checklist. Now you know what you can spend on each card on average, and then go shopping.
And I think that's also important too if you decide to broaden your collection. So if you branch out and go into different sports and want to do different players, I think that becomes even more important, as you mentioned it.
Definitely, especially if you're going to be a multi-sport collector like myself. I do all of them. Like it's you have to kind of watch what you're doing. So, okay, more questions here. Martin Birchall says, do you have any plans to interview the film star William Shatner about being on Star Trek and starring on TJ Hooker and being the oldest man on space? Yeah, of course I have plans to do that, Martin. I have plans for it, but I don't think that our friend Bill has any idea that I have those plans. But yeah, that's a great idea, and I would love to have William Shatner on the show, especially for his days on TJ Hooker. I mean, God, that was a good show. All right, vintage card collector. Does Jeff think that high grade, so 8+ vintage basketball is now overvalued?
No, I don't think so. Again, it's a lot of it's dependent on to me, the population of the cards. So sometimes cards of players can get, hyped up and can run up in value for sure. But I would say that, especially in cards with lower populations in the older years, I would say that I don't want to say you can't go wrong, but I think there's still good value there.
Yeah, I think that right now we're probably in a good spot. We've seen a lot of values come down across the board on things. But high grade, low pop, vintage basketball. The thing about vintage basketball that's so much different from any other sport is that there's only 3 sets. There's only 3 sets prior to like 1960, 69 or something 69. Like that.
Yep.
Yeah. Like you only have a 48, a 57, and a 61. And then there's no set for like 18 years, I believe. No widely distributed kind of major set. So you don't have a lot of selection. And just like think about the salary structure of an NBA team, you've got like 10 guys on a team. Each guy's making $30 million a year because there's only 10 guys to pay compared to a football team or a baseball team or a hockey team. You've got at least 20 players, up to 70 or so on a football team. It's a lot less average per player available than basketball. So it's similar. It's just a coincidence that analogy kind of works, but there just aren't that many cards to collect in vintage basketball. Am I onto something there? Is that part of the reason, do you think, or am I out to lunch?
No, absolutely. It's funny because all those 3 sets were failed experiments by those 3 companies. So
isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy right there? Yeah. Failed? Come on. Now they're beloved. Experiments.
And they're 3 different companies, if you notice. There's Bowman. They tried their way into basketball, and that just wasn't popular. And then Topps gave their chance in 57, and that was a flop. And then Fleer did 1961, and that didn't sell well either. And they didn't go back into it for another 25 years until 1986. And because of that is a reason why there's such low populations. So, first it wasn't popular. So they didn't make as many from the beginning, just printing the presses. They didn't make as many. And then also there was very poor quality control on most of these sets. And there wasn't any focus on it. They would, pay more attention to baseball or football as they produce the cards, and basketball is an afterthought. So a lot of these cards are way off center. They have print defects, other problems. And then people didn't keep them, as much either. So all those factors coming into it is you don't have as many sets, and there's not as many of them to go around in higher grade. So that kind of gives you, and the set checklist are smaller and have more Hall of Famers and stars in it. So that kind of gives you the rarity, the scarcity, and the popularity of having the best players in those sets.
Yeah. It's funny. They were all failed experiments, and now they are treasured. It's crazy, but that's why it's kind of all is perfect, right? It's the fact that they were failed back then, and there weren't many. Now people want what is rare. It's just the way that the collector mindset works, and how value is often driven as well. Mark wants to know, Jeff, do you have any videos on YouTube? I mean, you do now. Did you before tonight?
I didn't. No, this is my debut.
Jake's Toe says, I may have missed it, but does Jeff collect any modern?
I've gotten to, short answer is yes. I did a little bit by default just because of collecting the Hall of Fame rookie set. There's more modern players coming into that. So, it was funny. My most modern card was a 2012 Prism card. And, I've come around and I've learned so much more about modern cards, and because I didn't collect in the era of Michael Jordan and the key 96, 97, 98. And so I missed out on learning a lot about those inserts and all that. And then modern cards today, I don't have any, big cards, I would say, of modern players, but I have started to buy a couple here and there, and I've actually moved out of my swim lane a little bit and into some other cards as well, like a little bit of soccer cards, believe it or not. And I bought a couple of football cards. I bought a Wayne Gretzky card.
I was hoping to hear something hockey, so thank you.
Wayne Gretzky. That's my only hockey card, I'm sad to say.
That's the way it goes, though, when it comes to hockey for a lot of people. That's okay.
Yep. And, I've also started to try to get into the autographed cards a little bit. And there's so much to learn there. And things vary so much. It's like, do you want a nice signature, or do you want a nice grade of the card, or do you want both? Mm-hmm. And it's the player. So there's so much, to me, there's so much within those bands that it's kind of very wide open and difficult to collect. So I'm trying to learn a bit more about that.
What you just mentioned, no matter how advanced of a collector you are, no matter how long you've been in the hobby, you can always find something else to collect. There's so much out there. The body of work of this hobby it's extraordinary, and you're never going to know it all. You're never going to be aware of every single card that's ever been made, especially with all these discoveries happening in all sorts of countries, on soccer cards especially, boxing cards. We're hearing a lot about cricket cards nowadays. Mm-hmm. You've got racing cards. There's so much available. Non-sport, Hollywood, music, historical figures. There's all sorts of things that you can collect. There's the 52 top set called the famous one being the baseball set, but then there's the look and see set, which is filled with historical figures. Babe Ruth actually has a card in that set. And I own 2 cards from that set. One is the Billy the Kid set. We got a card. And the second one is the Queen Elizabeth card.
Wow.
Who we all know just passed away this past week. And all of a sudden I started seeing Queen Elizabeth 52 tops look and see cards on Twitter and Instagram and places. And I thought, oh, I have one of those. I didn't show mine, but it's just interesting how, if you are a sports fan and therefore you collect cards, that's great. You're probably going to stick to sports. But if you are a card collector who also likes sports, or depends how young you got started, these things are just sort of intertwined now, they're blended. You can find so many different things to collect. So just be open-minded or be curious even, and if not, hey, that's fine too. You collect what you like, as we like to say. Darren says, is it even worth collecting these young, very good quarterbacks, 2017 to present? I mean, only so many MVP awards and rings available to win. You think they can cancel each other out? Kind of off topic, Darren, but that's okay. In my opinion, no, it's not worth it. That's in my opinion. I think that it's gambling a lot of the time. And you said it right there, Darren. There's only so many MVP awards and rings. Now, it's not just MVP awards and rings that contribute to a player's value. It's their own stats and their popularity in their own region, and also in the hobby overall. But yeah, I mean, you look back in time, how many quarterbacks have cards worth money now? If we're just talking about financial value, how many quarterbacks have cards that are worth money now? You can probably count them on 2 or 3 hands, let alone in the last few years, you've got that many probably altogether. So the cream will rise to the top is my thought. JG wants to know, Jeff, do you collect any Bowman atomic refractors? I think you just said you didn't earlier, but I'll let you just confirm.
Yeah, no, not because they're not great cards. It's just, you have to stay in my lane. And I think that they're, especially when you get into like the Jordans and stuff like that, some of those inserts and those refractors are just awesome cards. But short answer, no, I don't have any of those. Okay,
no problem. Darren wants to know, Latrell wants to know, Jeff, do you collect any rare 90s cards like PMGs and rubies? And listen, you just said that this is an area that you're not well versed in. So let me just because we know you don't right now, but let me change the question a bit so we can keep Latrell's comment up here for a moment, which is, do you intend to? Are you curious? Are you interested? Are you tempted to get into some of these rare 90s inserts now?
Absolutely tempted and definitely curious. But when it comes to a lot of things, I probably would have got into it maybe 5 years ago. Would have been the time there, because it's very, very pricey. So you'd have to make a lot of different sacrifices to move into a lot of those cards. But I think that they're awesome. Like I really do.
Yeah, no doubt about that. The main, the most popular important players are extremely pricey in those cards. Like you're 5 figures just to get involved for the most part. So yeah. Eric says that Eric is working on you, Jeff, to get more into hockey. It's a slow process, he says. Well, hey, Eric, you got him into a Gretzky rookie. That's a good start. Vintage Card Collector wants to know, what is Jeff's opinion on vintage autographed rookies? That aspect seems to be gaining in popularity, and we are seeing more and more of that. At least I'm seeing more and more of that on Instagram. A few more cards in the PWCC Premier Auction over the past few months. What are your thoughts on these, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's something that I never considered in the past, and it's definitely gained a lot of popularity, and I don't see that stopping. Especially if a player has passed away and you don't know how many cards that have been signed by that player, then some of these cards pop up. Like you see, Babe Ruth, Goody or Gowdy cards autographed that pop up that just surface that no one had idea that he actually signed those cards. And to me, it's just the fascinating factor of cards from way in the past, people having that vision to actually get them autographed, and that they come out so nice and they were able to have the wherewithal to save them, and for them to actually just exist alone in some cases. And then compiling a set of those, to me, is a great challenge that can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that is super rare, especially deceased players. And we saw a Jackie Robinson autographed rookie card sell a month or two ago. I think if the card wasn't autographed, it would have been like $30,000, and it was autographed, it sold for like $85,000, something like that. Yeah. And I think it's because it's autographed. It's a niche within the hobby. And personally, for me, Jeff, I'm not interested in those. Let me rephrase. I'm not interested in adding those to my collection. I have my hands full with my non-autographed card collecting. And for me, there's something that it takes away something from the card itself. Now, I understand it also adds something to the card itself, but it takes away from the artistry of the card, because now you've got a scribble on there. And I know it sounds harsh, but you have a scribble that takes your eyes away from the original design and color and all that of the card. At least it does for me. And now you've got usually ballpoint, especially if it's from an older card. And for me, ballpoint pen autographs aren't the prettiest autographs out there. So yeah, I think it's cool that people are starting to collect them more and more and put a lot of money into them. I mean, hey, go for it. These are rare pieces. The player held the card. That's the coolest thing about it to me, is that the player touched that card. So you have that kind of, 1 degree of separation to that, touching that player yourself or shaking that player's hand. You've touched your card. Oh, maybe you haven't if it's encapsulated, but he's touched your card. So yeah, just some random thoughts there. But thanks for the question, Vintage Card Collector. And Jim wants to know, do you collect tickets?
I do not, but I am pretty interested just to see the preservation, like the modern, the Super Bowl tickets is pretty cool, but to see tickets from, the first World Series or some of these old tickets are just kind of just mind blowing to me that they still exist. So I probably won't get into tickets, but I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah. So same here, man. I mean, I think they're cool. And when they first started gaining a lot of notoriety, and I was talking about a lot of them on Collectible Live, I was becoming interested. And as the time went by, I thought, you know what, they are cool. It's cool, especially ones that were used, that were at the game. I think that's really cool. I think what takes it up a notch is if it's your own ticket. To me, that's cool. I still have my collection of ticket stubs from concerts and events that I've been to for the past, several decades. But I think tickets are cool. but I think that they're kind of, for me, I could see like coin collectors desiring them more than card collectors. And I might be way off on that, but I'm just coming up with this as on the fly right now. But when I look at them in slabs, again, they're cool. And there's definitely there must be some inherent value in them, because they do signify and represent a single event that hopefully something important happened in. That's really cool. But we talked about eye appeal earlier on. There's like negative eye appeal when it comes to tickets. I mean, most of them, some of them are beautiful. Some of them have pictures on them and players on them. And even some of the vintage ones are cool, but a lot of them are, like the Ticketmaster printed tickets. There's to look at that would not bring me any joy unless it was my own ticket and I had that experience at that event. So I'm kind of, I had no interest in tickets. My interest kind of went up as more and more people were talking about them, and I was talking about them, and I was looking at them and thinking about them more, just by virtue of putting your brain onto something, you think about it, you have some interest. And then, as I realized, they're not as beautiful as cards. I could never see myself buying a ticket instead of a card at this point in time. So there we go. There's our talk about tickets tonight. Anything you want to add before we move on?
Yes. I just thought about one ticket I would want to own. So the Wilt Chamberlain 100-point game would probably be a ticket I'd want.
And I think that's fair. And I think, there's probably a couple that I would want too. Like when my favorite player won the Stanley Cup, maybe I'd want one of those to put beside a memento or some sort of framed with a bunch of pieces in it type of display, something like that. All right. And what do you guys out there think? I mean, anyone out there collecting tickets? And did anything that I said or that Jeff said kind of rub you the wrong way, the right way? Where are you guys out on that? Love to hear some comments on that. But let's keep on going through the questions that we do have here. Jake's Toe says, I've been trying to get into some modern baseball, but I tend to go back to the eras I know. I mean, that's just what I just said about me and tickets. You look at it, you think about it, and then you get back to what you know and love. Yeah, great comment, Jake. And I think that's the best thing you can do is stick with what you know and what you enjoy. Vintage Collector says, I love the look and see set. Underaged, in my opinion. Underaged, or what do you mean underaged by that, Vintage? Underappreciated, undercollected. I could definitely see those because it's an amazing set. Yeah. Jerry says, a great set to collect is the Sportscasters set from the late 70s. Yeah, those are neat. I have a few of them, but to me, they're not cards because they're so big. Like they're literally the size of a magazine cover, almost. So, but still very cool and some great pictures for sure on those. Do you have any Sportcasters?
Right behind me. Got a few of them.
Okay, right on. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Mark says, Jeff, which player is your favorite, Jordan or LeBron?
Jordan.
Easy enough. Same here. Wes Dubois says, what would you guess is the percentage bump that an individual's card would gain when they're inducted into their respective sports Hall of Fame? So I'm just going to say one thing and then turn it to Jeff just to clarify, because to Wes and anyone else, if you kind of follow the trends, the bump doesn't come when they're inducted. It comes when they're announced, or that when people realize that they're about to be announced. That's when the bump happens. And then it's kind of downhill from there with a minor dead cat bounce at the day they're inducted, and then it's a decline from there. But probably not a decline back to where it was before, but maybe not too far from there. With that said, Jeff, what do you think would the percentage bump be that you've seen over the years?
I think to your point, a lot of it is kind of looking forward and kind of anticipating who you think is making the case to be in the Hall of Fame, and kind of, collecting and investing some of those players a little earlier than, once you get to that announcement phase. And I think, being earlier to the curve on that is where you can kind of be ahead of the bump.
Exactly. You have to anticipate these things ahead of time. And we were talking about the PSA Set Registry early, and a lot of action on that registry has to do with Hall of Famers, the Hall of Fame sets. So As soon as a player retires and they have there's that period of time, the grace time before they can be inducted, you have to start thinking about, are they going to be inducted? And maybe that's when you should get in, because the price is only going to go up from there as they get closer to induction eligibility.
And sorry, I just want to say one thing. The registry is a whole different animal when it comes to that, where if you're collecting a set, like for example, the Hall of Fame rookie set, everyone that collects that set is going to need those cards at some point. And it's whether they want to get them the day they're inducted, or whether they're okay waiting until, like you said, maybe the price has gone down a little bit. So if if someone's in the market for those, a lot of times there's some good opportunities to participate and sell to other collectors. And there's a more of an urgency. What I'm getting at is more of an urgency when it comes to the registry to kind of fill your set back up to 100%.
Right. Yeah.
It's a little different animal.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go to this one here. Darren says, don't mean to brag, but I do have a Huey Lewis in the News ticket. No big deal. I love it, Darren. That's awesome. Mitch says, my dad has every MJ Bulls playoff ticket stub, and I've always thought they were cool, but can't see myself ever actually spending big money on them. See, that's like Mitch, I would ask, was your dad at these games, or was he at some of them and then filled in the ones he wasn't at? That's cool. I mean, that you can make a display out of. You could even slab them and make a display out of them, especially if it's your favorite team, your favorite player, and you were there. But listen, I'm not gonna criticize anybody for collecting anything that they love and they want. I mean, my comments about tickets are as they relate to me as a collector, not to anybody else. And I think it's important I make that clear, because, again, I will never criticize or disrespect anybody for collecting what makes them happy. That's what this is all about. That's why this is a hobby. Jake's Toe says, I still have my 92 Dream Team debut ticket stub and got it signed by Drexler. Very, very cool. Michael Ham says, tickets are usually based on a personal connection to a specific event. Exactly. That's exactly my thoughts on them as far as my collecting them goes. Mark says, I own a Connie Mack auto on a postmarked envelope from the inaugural Hall of Fame induction in 1939. Autos like that just drip history. Yeah, that's a pretty cool piece. Richard Price says, and this is a question for you, Jeff, do you think the 48 Bowman George Mikan is basketball's holy grail?
It's one of them for sure. I think there's certain cards in every sport that kind of look like the Mona Lisa of the sport. You have like the Jackie Robinson or the Hannes Wagner in baseball, the Jim Brown card in football. And I think for basketball, George Mikan is definitely one of those for sure. And I think Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain kind of lean on that, but I'd say the Mikan probably more so.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking about a Mikan rookie earlier today. It's a card I've never owned. I've always wanted one, only because of the significance of the card, and because I know that it's important just by being in the hobby, not because I know anything about the player. I've looked into the player since then. I do know some things about him, but I have no emotional connection to George Mikan. I have no recollection of hearing that name when I was growing up. So if I were to acquire that card for my collection, it would be because it fits into the collection, because of what the card is versus who the player was to me.
Yeah.
So is it a holy grail? I think it is. But is it a holy grail for people who really know the history of basketball? Most likely it is. But is it also a holy grail for people who just collect cards and want all the important ones? Maybe just because of rarity, but does the emotional component of being a holy grail also exist? I think to be a holy grail, and I'm saying this for the first time and thinking about it, so don't hold me to this, everybody, but I would think that to be a holy grail, you should have some emotional attachment to it. There should be something deeper than just wanting it for its value or its status. I think you should want there should be something emotional for you. I'll leave it at that. Does that any comment on that, Jeff, before we go on, actually?
Yeah, I think in addition to that, I agree with the emotional part of it, but also kind of the chase, or the, how much it's taken to kind of get that card or copy, I think adds to that holy grail aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. How tough it is to get, like, that's the whole Honus Wagner card, right? I mean, very few people remember him, but he is a first class Hall of Famer.
Yep.
He was a superstar. It's not like he wasn't a great player, just has a rare card. So, okay, let's keep on going. DR says, what are your thoughts on the game used memorabilia basketball cards of the early 2000s? Seems like there are a lot of really cool, affordable cards. Can you comment on those, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're great cards. It's something that, like I said, you can only collect so much. So I never got into them, but I do think that they're really cool cards. I mean, it's to have a piece, especially game used, right? It was, if it was game used, to have that into the card and to have an autograph on there. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the player and who you want to collect regarding the affordability. But yeah, there's a lot of really nice stuff out there.
Definitely, there definitely is. Mark says, I have a 13-game plan back in 1987 for the Yankees. I have Guy Lafleur night back in 84 against Hartford. So several tickets in your collection. Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful because those are important games to you. You were at them. I think that's great. Mitch says, my dad went to all of them, the home games. So to me, that's the best reason for me to collect tickets, is because you were there and it's Michael Jordan too. We're talking about Michael Jordan home playoff games. I mean, come on. Is there any better games to go to in the history of sport? Maybe not. JG says 2013 World Series, Red Sox versus Cardinals, had tickets for game 5, not used. Sox swept and ended the curse. Very nice. You didn't go to the games though, JG. Why didn't you go if you had the tickets? Well, I'm sure there's good reasons for that too. Jake's Toe says there's a 48 Mike and Gray blank back PSA authentic on eBay for $70K right now. Yeah, if I'm buying a Mike and I want it as it was intended to be, I do not want a blank back. That's for sure. The back is so cool on those cards from the 40s. It's just a bunch of text and you can have fun reading it. Latrell asks the question, basically, do you like your cards graded or raw? I think we know we may not everybody knows, but Jeff's collection is all graded. He loves graded cards. How many graded cards do you have in your collection?
A little over 1,500.
1,500. Do you? I mean, to Latrell's question, do you collect any raw cards?
Yeah, I do. And for me, a lot of the raw cards are ones that I still have from, childhood collection. Other ones are some like parallel sets that. I'm not looking to collect the set as a graded. So I would, just collect it raw. And one cool one that I have is in 96, they made the 50th anniversary of the NBA. They made this Topps NBA Star set, and they made each card look like the rookie card of that player, but a modern version of it. And they had regular and refractor versions. So I collected that set. It's like, collecting, it's a very affordable way to collect the top 50 players and have, their rookie cards of that. So I thought that was really cool.
Really cool, for sure. JG kind of puts me in my place and says, Game 5 was not played. That's why I did not attend. I love that. Okay, good answer, JG. About the best answer there is. Love it. Thanks for the clarity. So, okay, there's two more things I want to do before we wrap up. We want to do some show and tell. You've got some cards to show, but I also want to talk about where you're at in life right now, Jeff, with your career. I just recently made a move. I just packed in a 25-year professional career to work in the hobby with a company in the hobby, tag grading, full time. I'm all in on the hobby now. How about you? Are you? I mean, listen, hopefully whoever you work with or for isn't watching right now if you're going to say that you want to get out of that work, but where are you at right now?
Yeah, so I'm at a point where, I've been in the working world, almost 20 years now. So, have experience. My background is finance and operations, traditionally in a corporate environment. But my passion, clearly has been sports cards. and I've really put a lot of thought into it. And it's moving into a similar type of role and mindset, and moving into the hobby is definitely something I have been highly considering.
So let's just put it out there for you. You never know who's watching these shows. And I mean, you're obviously a very likable guy, and even tempered, and have some skills and passion and love for the card. So I'm going to help you out and just say, if anyone out there, if you think if you're running a business in this hobby, you never know what Jeff Hart's here tonight, or any guest on Sports Cards Live could end up being a potential candidate for you. So who knows? I'm going to put Jeff's Instagram handle on the ticker again, Patriot_sports cards. If anybody does want to reach out to you, I don't know. I feel like I'm like a recruiter right now, Jeff, but hey, you just never know what can come of anything. So, so I'm happy to be able to say those words on your behalf.
Appreciate it, Jeremy.
Yeah, you bet. Let's look at some cards. I think people want to see some cards. I want to see some cards. Now, let's just take a second. When you showed the Wilt Chamberlain earlier, you kind of showed it off to your left, and it was on the side of the screen. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that your screen can be bigger like that. So you're the big one right now on here. And maybe, well, let's just see. Put up a card and let's try and find a sweet spot so we can see it nicely.
Okay. So this was the first graded card that I ever purchased.
Try and put it more in the middle if you can. And
Sorry.
Yeah, now hold it right there, but tilt the top towards the floor. There, stop. Perfect. Let's do it like that. That's good. Okay, so that's the 61 Bob Cousy. That's the first graded card you ever bought.
Yep.
And that's the card that got you started down the rabbit hole.
Yep, absolutely.
Card one of 1,500 right there, everybody. What else would you like to say about it, if anything, or you want to go on?
I just think for me, just the coloring of it, it looks looked very different from the start. Celtics fan, and it wasn't a cheap purchase as a first one either. So it still means a lot to me.
It's a mint 9. Yeah, it's a pretty card, man.
This is Bill Russell.
So we're looking at the 57 tops, Bill Russell. That is a PSA Near Mint 7. What do you want to tell us about? Tell us a story about, like, was that an upgrade? Was it the first copy and only copy you've ever bought? Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so it's the only copy that I've had, and I guess the story around that. Hold
it up when you're talking about it.
Sorry.
We want to see it. We want to see it. Yeah, thank you.
I guess the story around the card is not that memorable, but it's the opportunity to have a chance of picked up an 8 at one point. So I vividly remember, I bought this card, and about 2 weeks later, there was an 8 that popped up on eBay, and it would have only been, I think, it's definitely a lot of money, but $2,000 or $3,000 upgrade to go from a 7 to an 8. And, obviously the disparity between those prices now is just incredible, but, almost had the opportunity to be one grade higher, but I decided that it wasn't in my budget at the time. So stuck with this one.
Yeah. Amazing card.
This is just one I just wanted to point out. Most people would not know this player. This guy's name is Nat Sweetwater Clifton. So this is card number 1 in the 57 set, and it's an 8, and there's only 12 or 13 of them and none higher. So if you're going to collect the 57 set, this is one of the cornerstones of that set. So it has some meaning in relation to that. And he was also the first African-American to sign an NBA contract.
Wow.
So, I think that has some historical significance as well.
That's a fact that you just mentioned, yet I'd never heard of him, yet I hear all about Jackie Robinson. Do you know do you have any idea why the first African-American player to sign in the NBA wasn't as celebrated as the first baseball player? I guess baseball being America's pastime has a lot to do with it, but what have you learned about that?
I don't. I mean, the only thing I could think of is that it just wasn't as popular as a sport back at that time.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. Jake's toe wanted to know, what did the koozie cost when you bought it, if you're willing to share that information?
I think it was about $700.
Okay, great. What do you got next? Let's see another card.
All right. So, I mentioned the 71 set, that one I'm collecting now. I just think these cards are so cool to look at. It kind of brings you back to the 70s and that time with the writing at the top. And this is one of the, he was actually voted the best ABA player of all time, tied with Julius Erving. So most people have maybe not heard of Roger Brown, but he was one of the all-time best ABA players.
So this is the 71 top set. Yep. Roger Brown. And just for people listening, not watching, what I love about this card is the font used for the word Indiana across the top. That I've never seen that font on cards anywhere else. And I don't know why they did this, but in his name, they made, the first letter of his first name and the first letter of his last name are printed in red, and the rest of the letters are in black. So an interesting design. I think that's just so unique to the time period. And a really cool card. I like also how there's this pink square background, but yet the image of him, it extends past the border of the background where his head comes off and almost infringes on the word Indiana. Like, I just think it's a really cool card. I'm not that familiar with the set, so thanks for showing it. That's so cool.
Yep, absolutely. It's a Pop 1.
Pop 1. That's a Gem Mint 10. Yeah, wow. Yeah. Very nice. How did you find that card? Did you just find it at auction one day or what?
I got pretty lucky with that. It's actually a funny story about it. It came up. There's someone was selling 71 Topps cards on eBay, and I bought a couple of them. They were nothing special. And I asked, what else do you have? And this gentleman had a bunch of cards that he had as a child graded. And he said that I got some really good grades on a few of them. And this happened to be one of those cards. And so I bought a few cards off him offline. And that's how I acquired it. And then the story behind it is that I actually traded this card away to another collector. And he was a very well-known. He had an amazing collection, and he sold his collection a year or two ago. But he took it in a trade that I gave it away, and I got a Rick Barry card in return, so it was not too bad of a trade. But then I had to, when this guy sold his whole collection, I was trying to acquire it back, and so it came up at an auction, and I paid 10 times what I ended up, getting it for the first time.
Oh, but wow!
It's only one copy, so
yeah, you got it back at least. All right. Before you go to the next card, couple comments here. Mitch says, "I would love to see your 57 Dolph Shays. If you pulled it out, great. If not, you guys can show them on Instagram, maybe." Is that a card you pulled out?
No, but I can get it right now.
Okay, sure. And then while you're doing that, I'm going to read Jake Toe's comment. It says, "My first graded card I ever bought was a PSA 8 1988 Jordan All-Star back in 1999 for $20 on eBay when sellers still accepted money orders." All right, so let's do this again. Let's go back to this view. So there you go, Mitch. There's the 57 Dolph Shays. That's a near mint 8. What a cool looking card. I love the 57 top set for sure. Rubberside Down says, "Love hearing the story behind the cards. Thank you." There you go. Mitch says, "Dolph, the best Jewish basketball player ever." And Yankees fan says, "Jackie Robinson was in 1947. I think Sweetwater was in 1950. Yep. So that's a good reason too. 3 years later, the first African-American player had crossed the color barrier in major sports, being baseball, and then maybe the next major sport to cross wasn't as celebrated even though it probably should have been and today would be. Well, thankfully it's not a today issue. At least crossing the color barrier for the first time is not a today issue. Okay, let's go back to the next card.
All right. This, as I mentioned, I got into international cards a little bit. So this is a 1986 Merchanti Spanish card of a guy named Oscar Schmidt. And most people don't maybe not have heard of him, but he is the all-time scoring leader in professional basketball, more than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Wow. And what year did you say it was from?
1986.
And it looks like it's an EX5.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
These are really tough.
You don't see cards that shape or with those kind of dual. Well, you see some dual panel type of cards, but that's a really cool looking card. Love your shirt, by the way. Pro basketball. Can you show us more of that shirt for a sec? Oh yeah, I love it. Tops design, really cool. What else you got?
You have to do just a couple more. This is the Bird Magic Julius Erving, all triple signed.
Story behind? Did you get them signed yourself?
No, I didn't. I guess the story behind this one is just the kind of hunt to get the right copy that you'd be looking for. In this case, because all three players are signing it, you might have different ink, different size fonts, different ways of signing it. Some are vertical, some are horizontal. But my goal here was to try to get all the players signed in blue ink, in the middle, in like a thin Sharpie. So it took, even though there's a lot of these out there, it took a long time to find one like this.
Yeah, that's a card that is quite common as far as having all three autographs on it. But the reason it's quite common is because it's quite desired. It's probably the best triple autograph card you can get in basketball that might not have Michael Jordan on it as well. So an amazing card right there. Oh, what's this?
This one right here is
turn it horizontal if you don't mind. Yep. That was the upside down parallel version. Yeah. Now we have the right version. Okay. So
this is called a 1971 Topps Trios, and it was issued one per pack with the 1971 cards. And this is really the first third panel card that was ever made. So 1980 Topps was not the first time they did this. This is actually stickers. And this one right here is, I think, one of the better ones in the set. It's Pete Maravich, John Havlicek, and a guy named Bob Kaufman in the middle.
I love the black border. It's so different from the 1980 Bird Magic Irving card, which is white background. This has a black background. I think that is just a really cool looking card. So this is a mint 9. What's the total population on a card like this? Best guess if you don't know offhand.
Yeah, maybe 12.
12 total graded.
Well, in that grade. So, I mean, probably maybe, I guess maybe like 100.
Yeah.
In all grades.
Okay. Super rare overall. A couple comments before you show us the next one. Yep. Vintage Card Collector says, do you have any 1968 Topps test cards?
I don't, and I love that set. I think it's really, really cool cards. And if anyone doesn't know, it's black and white cards, and issued is a test issue, clearly. And they came in like mailing envelopes, and they didn't make that many of them. And the good thing about it was all the great players happened to be in that set at the time. So Bill Russell doesn't have that many cards, but he had a card in there. Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, and some of those are actually before their rookie cards. Wow. So that's, technically could be the rookie card, but because it's not, a main issue, they don't count it.
Cool. And Jake's Toe wants to know, do you have any Kukoc or Sabonis early European cards?
I do. Yes.
Of course he does.
Yeah. Hold on.
Of course he does. Let's see what he can pull out from back there. We're just waiting for him to find a few cards here.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, at least they're within rolling distance from
Yeah,
from
they
the
just
computer.
happen to be.
So in the meantime, I'm gonna show you guys the 6, because we were talking about his 61 Fleer basketball set. So this is an unopened pack of 61 Fleer that I showed him on the bus ride from New York to Atlantic City.
Awesome.
And I mean, Jeff, is this something like that you'd like to have to pair up with your, like, not particularly, I don't mean maybe my pack, but would you like to have an unopened 61 Fleer pack to go with your complete set?
Absolutely. I'd love to have one of those. It's they're so rare to find, and it's just a beautiful pack. I mean, just to see, just the basic guy in the front, shooting a basketball, and they always have funny advertisements on the back. I think that one either has a airplane kit or a science kit. It's one of those.
This one just has something for double bubble.
Okay.
But what I like about it is, I really just noticed this as I'm looking at it on the screen, is that the Fleer crown is like right above his head, almost perfectly centered above the head of the players.
Yeah.
Maybe to imply that these players are royalty of some sort. I don't know. I mean, back in 61, I don't think they were royalty compared to how they are considered by many to be royalty today. They are the new royalty, the modern royalty in our society.
I don't think I'll ever look at that pack the same now that I see that. It's pretty cool.
All right, let's see what you got.
All right, so here's the Sabonis. This is his first card. This is 1985 Merchanti. Pretty simple design. But this is issued in Spain.
Very nice. Very nice.
And then one set that I kind of really got to kind of create a personal interest in. There's a lot of oddball sets in the 70s that they did in basketball. And this is one of them. It was called 1973 NBA player postcards. And these were made in New Jersey. And these are obviously, if you look at them, they're very difficult to keep in top condition just because it's full color borders. And so there's not that many of these that are around. So not everyone has seen this set before.
Yeah, I hadn't until you showed it to me. Really cool set. Postcards are sort of cards, not really sports cards, just shape wise, but they definitely fit in overall. I have a few in my collection as well. And I kind of keep those slabs all together.
And to go a little bit modern, this is, I don't know if any people have seen this before, but the two-time MVP, this is Nikola Jokic's first card when he played for Mega Vizura in Serbia.
What year is that from? 14?
2014.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. It's a nice piece. I mean, how many of those are floating around?
It's not too uncommon.
Yeah. Okay.
But I just think the card is pretty neat.
Okay. I'm gonna go to some comments here. Take a little. How many more cards did you pull out to show here?
I could just show a couple more.
Sure. Let's do a couple comments here first. Darren says that love the trio rookie NBA cards. Sorry, Bird Magic Dr. J is cool. I have the LeBron Wade Carmelo. Do they still make trios now in modern in a similar style? I haven't seen any for quite some time, Darren. It might be the one you have is the last one that I'm familiar with. Are you familiar with anything besides that, Jeff?
No, that 03 set. I would like to own that card at some points. But yeah, that's the newest one I've seen.
Okay. Joe Pro says that you look very organized. Jake's Toe says, can those GAI slabs be trusted? Well, Jake, I spent real money on that one, so I certainly trust it. Says it's a sweet pack. It certainly is a sweet pack. No doubt about that. Mitch wants to know, do you know if that 85 Sabonis card, did those come in packs or how they were distributed?
I don't. I think that they were cut out of something. I almost wanted to say it was shoes, but I'm not 100% possible. But I think it's a card that's a cutout of a product.
All right, good. Okay, let's see the rest of your cards. Then we're at the 2-hour mark, so let's see the last couple of cards, and we're going to end this show. So
this is of the great Diana Taurasi. So it's probably one of the best WNBA cards I have. These are very difficult in high condition because they get chipped a lot, or the corners turn white very easily. So there's not, the population of these isn't too high. But I think it's it's for WNBA cards. I think this is a good one to own.
I would agree. I mean, I'm familiar with Diana Taurasi, and what a cool card. Before you do the next card, Latrell Sprewell says, "You seem like a cool dude. I like this guest." That's always a nice comment. And Darren says, "What's the back of the Oscar postcard look like?"
Nothing too exciting.
National Basketball Players Association. All right, good. Okay, let's go to the next card.
This is another oddball card. So this is Bob Cousy card from 1963 from Hood Milk, saying yours for better fitness.
Nice. Food issue. Bobby Burrell would love this piece. Very cool.
And then just one of the old Hall of Fame rookies. If anyone hasn't seen this set, this is the Sport Kings.
1933?
Yep. Yeah, so Joe Lopchick, he was one of the great players from the original Celtics, not associated with the Boston Celtics. And they were called them a barnstorming team that used to play mostly in the 1920s and 30s. And they would play over 200 games a year. And I think one year they had a record of 190 plus wins and maybe 20 losses or something like that.
Wow. Very neat. You have one more card to show, and then we wrap up?
Sure.
DR said that's a sweet Diana, for sure. Okay, what do we got here?
So this is the same year as the Dr. J. Artist Gilmore. He was from the ABA, and one of the best centers at the time. And he played in the NBA as well. So he was a dual player, and he was one of the best rebounders ever. Sometimes averaging over 20 rebounds in a season.
Wow, that's big. He was big. Very cool. I love that set. I love the fact that Julius Erving's rookie card has him playing for the Squires, I think it is, right? Like, you don't, that name just doesn't mean anything today, but it must have certainly meant something back then. Oh, there it is. The Virginia Squires. Was that an ABA team then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's funny because, I own a copy of that card, and I never even really realized that he was playing for Virginia. As long as I've coveted that card or owned that card, I actually have a painting of that card hanging in my rec room just over there. And I've never even realized really that it's Virginia. I realized it was the Squires, but I didn't know who that was. Never really registered with me. So that's pretty neat. All right. Grotman says the A-Train artist is very underrated. Best bull before MJ. And that might be saying a lot. It might not be. I'm not sure. But good stuff. Oh, wrong view. There we go. Okay, Jeff, we've gone over 2 hours here, so we're going to wrap up. So with that, let me just say a couple of things to the chat guys. Thank you for joining. Thanks for the engagement with the questions, the comments. Tomorrow on Collectible Live, Rob Gerard, who hosts a podcast called The Sports Card Therapist. Great podcast. Will be joining me. That's 7:00 Eastern tomorrow on this YouTube channel. Again, Collectible Live tomorrow, 7:00 Eastern. Next Thursday is the PWCC Premier Auction coverage. Adam Gray will be joining me, and I can announce it's been confirmed during this episode that we have a new special guest joining us for this episode of the PWCC Premier Auction. We're bringing in a baseball guy. If you are a YouTuber or if you're on YouTube, you may know him. He goes by the name of Filmington. Filmington will be our special guest on the PWCC Premier Auction Show this coming Thursday. And then next Saturday on Sports Cards Live, where Jeff is sitting today, we will have a gentleman by the name of Matt Wirth. Now, you might not know that name, but you might not know him by that name, but you might know him by the name of Cage Lawyer. Cage will be joining us on the show next Saturday. Those are my announcements. A couple comments here very quickly. I see we have a whole bunch coming in here. Thank you, guys. So Eric, thank you so much. Yankees fan says, Jeff, your thoughts on the Icy Bear set? I love the stars included in it. Take a second and speak to that, Jeff.
Awesome set. 1972 came in Icy Bear food products, and it had all the stars in it in the 70s. I used to collect that set. I had the player, so it's awesome. I love it.
Baseball Card Curmudgeon says, great show. Cheers, fellas. Thank you, Baz. Jake Stowe, fun watch. Thanks for your time, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Eric, thank you. Eric Witowski, good to see you. Says, love the history. Nice job, Jeff. Darren says, after hours, is that still a thing? It is sometimes, but probably not tonight. I'm still getting over like a 2-week cough, and I'm starting to feel my voice go. So I'm not going to do a late show tonight, guys, but we'll get back to them. Mitch, fun episode. Love seeing all the vintage. Justin says it is hard to resist the urge to buy some more slabs on eBay right now. Right? That's how it goes. The more we talk about it, the more we want to buy. Jeff, thank you so much, man. This reconsider. I don't know what I could do. I don't have see, I'm coughing, guys. I'm still getting over it. I'd love to. Maybe I'll come back. Give it 5 minutes after this one. And if you see me come back live, maybe I will. I said it's a 50-50 chance, which isn't that bad, I suppose. And Jake Stowe says, Jeff's debut going to be more vids. Hey, you never know. That's how it kind of happens. Somebody guests on one show and then other people invite them on theirs. You get a more rounded view. Tyler wants after hours too. All right, guys. We'll do a short after hours. Adam Lynn, let's go after hours. Okay, guys. We'll do a short after hours. After this. You got a fever for sports cards. That's true. Jeff, thank you so much. I will do after hours, guys. You talked me into it, so give me 5 minutes after this ends. Jeff, thanks so much, buddy. It's been great having you. Yeah, man. I mean, I love your approach. I love your collection. Great job. It's been nice getting to know you this at the National and the bus ride to the National, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon. Final comments from you, and then we're going to end this thing.
Yep. It's been really great spending time with you, Jeremy. Love the show as a fan, and even better being able to speak to you on it. So it's really been a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that so much, and yeah, it's my pleasure having you, and I think the chat really liked it. So good stuff, man. Thanks for being here. Hang tight right there, guys. We're gonna end this. I'll come back in 5 minutes. We'll do some after hours action, and then all the other shows coming up in the next week or so. So thank you, everybody. This episode is over.